Cities have a major problem when it comes to pollution. Pollution that you see at the street level makes its way into pipes and it flows straight out into waterways without any treatment at all. So in order to address these issues, we have two solutions. One solution is digital, the other is physical. On the digital side, we have sensors. These sensors capture data at the storm drains, so public works departments can save money by focusing their efforts in cleaning pollution where they need to do it most. They also prevent floods because they don't get there too late when the pollution has accumulated so much that water is backing up into the street. On the physical side of things, we have our stormwater filters. This is our patented technology that works more effective than others. The way that it works is it blocks debris at the street, so stormwater professionals can simply clean it out. They save money because they don't have to use vacuum trucks. They also prevent floods because the pipes are not getting clogged with debris. And of course, our mission is to stop ocean pollution, and we do this by preventing that debris from making its way out into the oceans. Now that you know more about our technologies, please tell others so that we can work together to stop ocean pollution.
Hello and welcome back to SOLIDWORKS Live. We're coming to you virtually again for another episode. Today we're going to be talking about going from an idea to a startup with SOLIDWORKS. We have a cool customer story. Before we dive into that, want to do a couple, just announce a couple things we have coming up. As we've been kind of doing over the last few months, we have this great program we're running on YouTube only. It's called SOLIDWORKS Live Design, and you can tune into that Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you haven't had an opportunity to check out Live Design, I encourage you to go to our YouTube channel, find the playlist SOLIDWORKS Live Design, and you can see great technical tips like this from Tandy Banks, where last Friday he went through designing a holder for a game console out of cardboard. What's really cool about this is he showed a lot of great sheet metal tools and how to use those tools. So Live Design is a great place to learn a lot of tips and tricks, interact with the different presenters that are presenting there, ask questions. It's a very engaging opportunity. So make sure you tune in Fridays, 1 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube. And if you want to make sure you get notified for those, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you hit the bell notification icon whenever those go live, and likewise, when SOLIDWORKS Live goes live on YouTube, you'll get a notification as well. Today, we're hopefully back streaming on all of our channels, including live.solidworks.com, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and we're back on Instagram again. I think we have some audio coming in from the studio there as well. So to get started, we want to talk about from idea to a startup with SOLIDWORKS. And to do this, I want to invite two guests onto SOLIDWORKS Live today. We have both Emilio Lopez, the CEO of SOP Technologies, the video you just saw before we started, and Jillian Friot, the program manager for 3D Experience Works for startups. Thank you, Emilio and Jillian, both for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So like everybody, like we've been doing for the last few months, everybody's broadcasting from their home offices. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day here to join us. What we're going to be discussing is actually the startup program that we have here at SOLIDWORKS. Emilio is a customer who participated in the startup program, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about what that experience was like. Does that sound like a good way to go?
Yes, absolutely.
Sounds great.
All right. So for the folks watching at home, Emilio, tell us a little bit about what SOP Technologies is, because it's actually an acronym and it stands for something fairly important that I think a lot of people can get behind. And your organization really believes kind of in the name of your companies. Can you kind of tell us what SOP is about?
Absolutely. And thanks again for hosting this. I think it's a great opportunity to not only show what SOLIDWORKS can do, but how a startup like mine can use the tool as effectively as possible to grow. So with that said, the SOP and SOP Technology stands for mission, which is to stop ocean pollution. So that you can understand a little bit more about the issue, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of marine debris, about 80% of it, when you hear these plastic pollutions and microplastics and things like that, they actually start off at the street. So it starts off as litter that people drop on the road, whether it be a food container, a bag of paper chips, or things like that. And then when it rains, the water conveys all of this inside the storm drain openings, whether it's a curb or a grate. And then it goes from one pipe to another pipe and it flows out into a local waterway. So this might be a river, a canal, a lake, or the bay, like it is over here in Miami. It just goes out into the Biscayne Bay without any treatment at all. So this water is not treated similar to the way that your house water is, right? If you're using the sink or the toilet, that goes to a water treatment facility. Stormwater doesn't have that. So we started this company, my father and I, back in 2010, when a local public works department here in the Miami area reached out to him. And they said, you know, we have this issue where a lot of leaves and plastics and bottles and things like that are clogging up our pipes. And because of that, we have street flooding. So that's when my father came up with this idea for a screen, we call it a stormwater filter, to prevent those things from getting inside the system, while at the same time allowing the city crew to save money because it's easier to sweep the streets and like the things that you saw in the video. So the company really started with design improvement over what was already out there. So I'll go ahead and quickly explain what that is. So the idea to prevent trash from getting into the stormwater system was around well before the business was, our business was. And this is the type of thing that a lot of people try to do. They used a basic perforated sheet metal, right? And the problem with using this type of screen is that it clogs very easily. Right? You have leaves and other things that just come up against this, and then you actually end up causing more flooding issues. So that's why a lot of cities don't use that. So the idea that my dad came up with back in 2010 was to have an upward flow screen, or we call it a stormwater filter, where the water from the street goes this way, and it goes at an upward angle through the screen and then out the other side, right? So let me tilt this for you here so you can see there. So the water goes through, right? Now, I didn't study mechanical engineering in college. I studied finance. And I'm sure that's something that I can delve deeper into, but I hope, Jeremy, that was a good brief intro to your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the last pieces there was really interesting. Anybody, you know, a lot of people have ideas that they want to bring to life, and not everybody comes from a mechanical design or engineering background. So you had to tackle these, you know, you had an idea that you wanted to bring to market. And at the end of the day, you needed to learn how to design this product from scratch. Tell us what that was like kind of in the early days before SOLIDWORKS got involved.
Sure. So like I mentioned, I studied finance, right? So I was working as a consultant in Washington, D.C., doing strategy. Then I went to work with Google in California. I did some IT project management. But this is literally how it happened. And I don't think I've shared this with you just yet. I was in a bus one day and going to work, and I looked out the side of the road and I saw a sign that said tech shop. And that was a makerspace that they had out in California, and there were several around the United States at the time. So I went to tech shop one day and I started learning more about how to build products, because it wasn't enough to have an idea and only work with the manufacturers. I felt like I needed to learn a little bit more about engineering and manufacturing. So at the tech shop, I started learning how to weld, how to use a plasma cutter, a water jet, injection molding machine. So all of these things I was learning. Now, I didn't really have too much of the CAD experience yet. A lot of things were a little bit more hands-on, even when it came to using a CNC mill and then some rudimentary software that I was using at the time for that. And I realized that I was lacking a bit on that area. But, you know, I went to New York City later on. I worked with a couple of startups over there. And I also went to a makerspace over there called New York Makerspace. And 4 years ago, I came to Miami to dedicate my time to this company and our mission. And I was at Moonlighter Miami and also Make MIA, which are local makerspaces here. And they kept telling me about SOLIDWORKS. and also the manufacturers that we work with, the sheet metal shops like MJM Manufacturing here in Miami and Metalworks. They kept telling me that this is an app that they use and that this is what the industry uses. And I didn't know this. I was still using Illustrator for 2D vector files that then I used to create like this specific part right here. This is with Illustrator. And at the time, we were welding the product. So over here, you see some welds. So this product design, although it has been in the field for several years and it worked very well, it wasn't really designed optimally. And there were many limitations to the software that I was using. So talking to the manufacturers in the maker spaces, I learned about SOLIDWORKS. And I believe it was someone from Moonlighter, Miami, that told me that SOLIDWORKS has an entrepreneur's program for the 3D experience. So we can actually obtain licenses for free in order to try out the software and take our business to the next level.
All right.
So I hope that was good.
Yeah. Yeah, so you get your hands on SOLIDWORKS, and one of the things you mentioned just there, so you used to have a design or a welded product that you did, which is great for a one-size-fits-all, but in the conversations I've had with you, you've come across some really unique challenges when you deal with different cities around the country, around the world, and that welded one-size-fits-all solution wasn't really working out so well for you. Why don't you... So you showed us that early prototype. I think you have some samples of kind of how the design has evolved, but let's talk about some of the challenges and how you solve those with a tool like SOLIDWORKS.
Sure. So one particular case is the city of Aventura. So Aventura, they first started using our product in 2018. They liked it. They had about 25 units installed for a pilot project, the curb filters. And then they wanted to install it citywide. So it's already been there for a whole year, over a year now, throughout the entire city. We received an award from the APWA, the Public Works Association. But the challenge from an engineering standpoint in manufacturing, assembly, and eventual installation of the product was that we were dealing with old infrastructure. It wasn't a brand new project. And we've had these new projects already coming up where it's much easier. You know that you're using a standard size and you're producing multiple units of the same exact size. Aventura wasn't like that. It's already an established city, but they needed to protect and prevent stormwater pollution from getting into the bay throughout the entire city. So there were 329 various locations where we're going to install the product. But that meant that we had 61 different combinations of sizes for the product. So we realized we needed something that was going to scale up. So using SOLIDWORKS, one thing was the design, right? So you mentioned the welding. Welding aluminum is very difficult. It's expensive, but we needed something that was easier to put together, right? That was still durable. So working with our manufacturer, they told us about these little tabs. You can see right here, there's a little tab. So this is a twist tab that we use now to fasten the product together. And with SOLIDWORKS, we're able to create several variations and heights of the same part. Now, this is all just one part file. This is not multiple part files, just one. And we use an Excel table that tells us what sizes we're going to use. So that's one thing. The other thing was the length of the product, right? So we have over here, let me show you a completed stormwater filter. So this is a curb filter. And as you can see, the twist tabs we're using up here. And these we put together with a simple tool that we use to just insert and then twist. So that's how it's put together now. Now, this ability to create hundreds of different screens for different locations throughout the city, having a serial number for each one, instructions for assembly. The way we were able to do this with SOLIDWORKS was with an Excel file. And I know it sounds silly, like how can one Excel file drive all of these different versions and sizes? It's because we use what's called the design table. And that then in combination with the Visual Basic script that I learned how to create using the online forums for SOLIDWORKS and downloading code and reviewing and putting things together, allowed us to actually generate hundreds of these with ease. And it was tough the first time, but then we had to do it again because we had a slight tweak in the design. And that allowed us then, given that we had already created the code, to just quickly regenerate hundreds of design files again. So the SolidWorks features that we use were the design tables for our parts, and also the VBA scripts, so we can generate these shop drawings or these documents that people had to use for each and every unit to assemble them properly for all of these different locations throughout the city. If we didn't have SolidWorks, that just wouldn't have been possible. And if it would have been possible, we would have spent a lot of time doing it, and it would have been very error prone. So we were able to do something faster and with less errors because we were using this more sophisticated app.
So did you ever think back in the day when you were in the world of finance that you would be designing a product in 3D CAD and bringing it to life? I mean, has there been anything interesting you've learned along the way that you didn't realize, when you looked at a product that things you would have to take into consideration that tools like SolidWorks helped you with along the way?
Yes. One thing is that comes to mind is, so I'm showing you here, these are different brackets that we use, right, to hold the filter. So now we have some that, you're used to hold it, for example, on the side, because not every location can you install it just straight out into the ground with the concrete. Here's a different bracket that we had to design. Now, when we got started, again, not coming from a mechanical engineering background, I didn't understand what a K-factor was. I didn't understand that when you have a flat part and then you bend it, right, the sum of the height and the width of that part is not the same, right? When you bend it, you lose some material, and this part is not as high as it should be, or as you would expect, like if you're folding a sheet of paper. So you have to factor in the stretching of the metal, right, over here on the part. Now that is something that, for me, someone that didn't come from a finance background, imagine trying to understand these concepts and figuring this out, and even less to try to design that in a 2D app like I was using initially with Illustrator. That just wouldn't have been possible. So, learning these concepts was incredibly useful, but not only learning them, but also being able to use a tool that allowed me to create a design. So we create this design that's bent, and then we can create a flat pattern out of it. And then from there, we send it to the manufacturer, just the flat patterns. And we tell them where they need to bend it and at what radius to create these bends and all of that. So these are some of the things that we learned. Also, the need for having assembly files for the manufacturers. This was something that I didn't know before. I thought that you can just give them a technical design and say, hey, here are all the parts that I have, and I want you to put them all together. It's much easier said than done. Right? When you're working on creating your own product, I'm sure many of you know, it's much easier to think that it's easy to explain your product, and it's not. So you need to have very detailed documentation. And SolidWorks allowed me to, make a design change, but then have that propagate automatically into the different documents that are given and printed out for the folks that are there assembling the product afterwards. So it helps with quality control, and you don't have to repeat something multiple times. And like I said before, with the design tables, I was able to use my Excel experience, my very limited Visual Basic experience, to then create a physical product. I would have never, ever imagined that I would be using those skills in the area of mechanical engineering when I was an intern on Wall Street and I was studying finance in college.
Yeah, so that brings up an interesting point. So you got access to these tools. You had mentioned you had heard about it through these maker spaces, and I think you even mentioned the entrepreneurship program. So I'd like to bring Jillian Friot on to talk about this. So you got to a certain point where you had this idea and you wanted to bring it to life, but finding and getting access to these tools can be a challenge for somebody who's got an idea and wants to get started. Jillian, why don't you tell the folks at home a little bit about what is SolidWorks for startups and entrepreneurs?
Yeah, sure. So, Emilio, I love his story. I think he makes such a great point that, it's hard. We realize that it's really hard to start out, and it's always easier said than done, right? So our philosophy and why we even have the program is because we believe in helping hardware startups and helping all startups. We realize that SolidWorks can help a startup like Emilio and take an idea and bring it actually to life, and hopefully save some, definitely save a lot of time and money in the process. So really, started with the philosophy of we can help hardware startups in providing huge value in our tools and help them to grow faster. And then sort of also, as Emilio said, have access to something that is what the industry is using, what your manufacturers are using. So give startups a tool that they otherwise may have trouble accessing. So yes, our goal really was to make sure that we had a program that allowed startups to access SOLIDWORKS for no cost for a year. So the program used to be called SOLIDWORKS for Entrepreneurs, and we recently changed the name. So it's now 3D Experience Works for Startups, because we're super excited that our offering for startups is expanded to 3D Experience roles as well. But basically, it gives startups access to the premium level of our tools and resources so that they can do everything like Emilio did, from design to simulation, composer, visualize for photorealistic renderings, and now access to 3D Experience, so our cloud-based roles and business management tools.
So that's all really exciting. And I'm sure, somebody with an idea at home is sitting here and they're frothing at the mouth. You said access to free software. So now we don't just give software away to everybody for nothing. Tell us a little bit about the criteria to qualify as a startup. So if somebody is watching at home and they have an idea and they want somebody who has an idea and wants to bring it to life, tell us what some of the criteria is for that.
Sure, yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, it's we have this program specifically for startups, and for us, what that means is under $1 million in funding, under $1 million in revenue, and less than 3 years in business. So really focusing on startups who are early stage, like Emilio, and can really use that support in their early days. And we try to make sure we have as many resources as possible available to them to help them grow. And it's funny, I think back to when Emilio and I met, we had never met before. He called me up out of the blue to figure out if he was eligible and met that criteria. And then as we got talking, he's telling me about how he's a finance major and he had never learned these tools, but realized how much he needed it. And so I was inspired by his story and his kind of grit and determination as a startup to really make his idea come to life. So it's awesome to see how far he's come.
Yeah. So if somebody at home is watching this right now and they're wondering where they can go learn more, is there some place where somebody interested in signing up for the startup program can go?
Yeah, for sure. The best place to go is our website, which is here on the screen. So solidworks.com/entrepreneurs. And that'll allow you to apply there, give you all the information, eligibility criteria, and what the offering is too, as far as what you can get access to. And we mentioned design tools, simulation tools, photorealistic renderings, and then also the 3D experience roles that are more business focused, so project management tools, data management, things like that, collaboration. Yeah, and then also you can join us on 3D Experience in our community, which is an open community for startups who are applying to the program, which is similar to this link, but solidworks.com/startup-program. And you can communicate with our team there, with other startups, other founders who have joined the program. So it's a great place to learn from others.
Speaking of learning, Emilio, I have to imagine when you got started and you were introduced to a whole new tool set that you've never seen before, how do you even begin to learn tools like this early on in the I'm starting up now? SOLIDWORKS has given me all these tools. What are some of the ways that you got started?
Sure. So as I guess many people have experienced before, you try using a new app that you haven't heard of, especially if it's a very sophisticated app like SOLIDWORKS, has a lot of features and capabilities, and you open this up, it looks like a cockpit of an airplane, and you have all these bells and whistles, these buttons, and all these things you can do, and it's overwhelming at first. But I think people should just give it a shot. All I really did is I started off with lynda.com trainings, and that really got me started. I learned about all these different features and how you actually use the product to create your design, and it's very intuitive. I mean, you start off with, I'm just getting some parts here just to show you, with a concept of what you want to draw, like a sketch, and it's called a sketch. So we had this part, for example, over here, right? And we wanted to draw it out. So I created that sketch, which is essentially a two-dimensional sketch, in the app, kind of like if you're drawing on a sheet of paper. And then from there, you extrude it, right? You make it thicker. So that's your part. And then after that, you put these different parts together. And I made a lot of sense to me because I came more from the maker community, the maker spaces. So I knew that first you have to create your part and then you put it all together. And that's just called an assembly. So once you understand some of these basic, more general concepts, then you're able to build on top of that. So in addition to using just online trainings and watching YouTube videos, which there are many YouTube videos out there on SolidWorks, we also use the forums online, and we really went into the forum community once we had to create these visual basic scripts and code that were very specific to a unique need that we had. But it was all online, it was available, and that's really how I learned how to use the app. I didn't go through any formal courses with teachers one-on-one. It was really just online learning that got me to the point that we're at right now.
Another great resource that's out there that people can take advantage of is My SolidWorks. My SolidWorks has thousands of video tutorials that walk you through all of the tools in the SolidWorks portfolio, everything from SolidWorks Desktop to the 3D Experience platform. Now, Jillian, when somebody signs up for the startup program, do they also get access to My SolidWorks as a good launch pad to go and kind of get started as well? Not everybody has a lynda.com account, so do we provide access to My SolidWorks Pro or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm super happy to say that they do get access to My SolidWorks Pro. So it's a great way for, somebody like Emilio to learn, or even if you're a bit more of an experienced SolidWorks user to, refine some of those skill sets. So yeah, we're happy to make sure that, any of the best resources we have are available to support the startups.
Okay. The other thing you had mentioned is we're now giving everybody access to the 3D Experience platform and the roles that are available there. So now we're going to talk about this in a little bit. Emilio's kind of graduated beyond being a startup. But can we get Emilio access to some of the 3D Experience platform tools that we have? Seeing how he just kind of missed that date.
Yes, we're excited to actually get Emilio up and running on the platform. He just got access a couple days ago, so he's going to start diving into a bit more of that. And as we've talked about a bit recently, collaboration's been a big thing that's important for him. So we're excited to have him on the platform, be able to connect better with others on his team and manufacturers.
Yeah. So Emilio, you see anything on the 3D Experience platform that you could, as a SolidWorks desktop user, that you can start taking advantage of?
Absolutely, absolutely. So this particular customer that we had is an architecture firm in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They're creating a rain garden so they can capture a lot of the stormwater, so it doesn't have to go out into the pipes. But they have a catch basin structure, right? So the rain goes into this big catch basin, and then it goes out into the pond that's nearby. So we worked with them to design our product in a way that allows them to contain all of the trash and the litter inside there in the catch basin structure, so they can remove it more easily. We did this sending them a 3D PDF. Now, this is something that's already available with the desktop version of SolidWorks, but it allowed them to just zoom in and rotate just using Adobe Reader. So there's no additional app that they have to download. But having the 3D Experience and these web-based collaboration tools and the ability for somebody to view something using a web browser and to collaborate with manufacturers that I may not be able to meet in person, that's a huge plus. We have, for example, a manufacturer in Australia for a customer that we have in Australia. And they build the product for us over there, and everything is via email. But if I'm able to also have a more engaging conversation with them, or send them something so that they can interact with it online and maybe even write comments on that, that would be a huge plus for us, because it will make sure that we're not missing something that might be a design flaw or a design change that we need to make when we're working with somebody in a place where we cannot physically be there. So absolutely, these 3D experience tools will be very handy for us.
Well, Emilio, I can't wait to touch base with you further down the line and see how you've taken advantage of some more of these tools. So for anybody watching at home who may be a startup, or maybe just has an idea, any recommendations you would give them? I mean, you've been the example of somebody who's had an idea, wants to bring it to life, doesn't even have a design background. What advice could you provide for the folks out there who may be in a similar situation to yours?
Sure. So I would say if you're designing a physical product, especially, look at the startup program. Apply for it, see if you qualify, have a conversation, and then give it a shot. I mean, I did not come from a mechanical engineering background. If I did, I would have known about SOLIDWORKS many years ago. But fortunately, I was still able to use SOLIDWORKS. And it's something that really transformed the way that we're able to engage with our customers. I actually pull up my laptop and I show public works directors design ideas and rotate and even make changes if we need to make changes on the spot during meetings with them. But on top of that, with the manufacturers, they're able to help us a lot more. Like that example that I gave with the local, MJM manufacturing in Miami, they had a tab design that they were using with other sheet metal parts. They were able to just send me the SOLIDWORKS file, and I was able to work with that. They worked with me with some design improvements that I was making because they knew that I had SOLIDWORKS, and we could interact a lot more efficiently. But at a more high level, just talk to other entrepreneurs. Go to a makerspace if you have one in your community, or a fabrication lab, and see what advice they can give you, and then take it from there. It might be a little bit complex at first, because especially if you're someone like me that did not have a physical product design background to create a physical product and hardware, but you can do it. There are many new things out there that make things a lot easier. And with tools like SOLIDWORKS, especially if you're able to try it out for a while and take your business to the next level, I say, why not? Right? Just give it a shot and see how you can take it from there.
All right. Well, Emilio, I want to thank you for joining us here today.